Welcome to this tutorial series where I built a macOS app from start to finish. I'm going to use SwiftUI and try to see where things are going. What I'm going to build is a screenshot app similar to ScreenshotX. This is a great playground where we can really test some of the features you can implement with macOS. I'm going to show you an example of another screenshot app, which is Sniper. This has a free tier, so you can also test this. Now, when you open this app, you see this window with one button, take a screenshot now. If I press this, my cursor changes and I can drag and click, and now this created a screenshot and moved it to the editor where I can change the background and add here some annotations. Down here, I have some options for drag me, so I can drag this image to another application. I can copy this to the clipboard, now it's closed. I can then go and paste it somewhere, or now I need to find out where this was. So open recent. If I go in the menu, file, new, doesn't do anything, so this is not connected to anything. And open recent is not connected to anything, so I actually want to reopen this. I can open the archive. Okay, I can't go back to my last one. I'm getting already confused, as you see here with the UI, because there's elements and don't do anything. This is not good. Also, he added another menu app. This you can move to the file one, so you can, with SwiftUI menus, you can decide which position, this is in commands, which position. Do I want to add this command after the new document or close or save commands? For example, here, these are save buttons. I can use this. If I take a screenshot with this app, instead of using the save buttons down here, it's much more natural to add this under file, save and save as. This is exactly the two things that he added here. And it kind of is weird. This is a problem with UX design. You want to have a macOS, especially on macOS. This is quite important. Users are having a very high expectations for a nice flow, productivity. And I don't really like to think where things are. I like to have the same styling as all the other system apps. So we want to have a unified, as Apple calls this, a unified user experience, where all actions that are similar should be in similar positions. So this is here, this copy save. But also, if you want to use the settings, under the Sniper settings, this is not connected to anything. He added this under app preferences. So this window is actually the settings window, which is actually the one that launches. Not really sure if this is good user experience. Also, you saw me struggling with where do I find here what. To be honest, I also found it difficult to design a good macOS app and to understand all these system behaviors, what the user expects, how to add keyboard shortcuts, these commands, toolbars, where should I place something, how do I do this with the sidebar. Here that it expands or collapses, which this one doesn't. All these small things. Maybe even if I make this small, I actually want to hide the sidebar. I found macOS development a lot more complicated. One reason is the UX design. And the other part is obviously you have usually a lot of windows. Window management is a problem, or needs some time to get a hang of. Then the data flow, if I have multiple windows and I change something in one window, it needs to be reflected in the other if it's shown or not. So I need to make sure that I update everything correctly and pass my data around correctly. So there's a lot of things we could do for macOS. The other thing we can add is here menu bar extra. In this case, he used the same actions as for this menu app here. This is exactly the same. The actions that he added here probably make a lot more sense. Maybe you're in the browser or in Xcode and you want to take a screenshot. You don't remember the shortcut and you just can go here. Okay, so this was a short introduction. In this series, I'm going to create a screenshot app, and I'm taking inspiration from this app and some of the other screenshot apps. So the main functionality that we have to build in this first part is how do I add a button to take a screenshot that does this functionality and then load it into my application so we see it in our app. This is the first step, and then the next part of the series, we're going to work on image annotations, formatting, drag and drop, and also how to improve our user interface to make it more native and polished. Let's start by investigating how to create the screenshots. And we're going to use a command line tool. So if you open Spotlight and use for the terminal, in the terminal app, you can use command line tools. This means you can just run the apps with any GUI, so without any user interface, which is probably one of the most developer hacker things you can do, to sit in a coffee shop and just use the terminal, because it looks so professional. The terminal is really powerful because you can use system provided commands that have a lot of functionality and power. This is also why you should be very careful when you use some of the stuff, because you can mess up your computer quite a lot. We are not going to use any of these super powerful commands. If you worked with a Unix system, maybe at the university or somewhere like I did, you might be used to something like ls, which is listing out what files you have in the current directory. This is my home directory. Per default, you're in the home directory. You can also use cd, which means you can go to another one. So this would be going to my desktop. Now I change to this folder and I can go ls, and you see the screenshot mess that I have in my desktop folder. Okay, the one that I wanted to use is screencapture with the argument of cv. So now you see it actually starts the screen chapter. You see this little camera icon. And when I hover over certain areas, it gets blue. This is because it's suggesting me, or it's telling me what it's going to capture when I click. So I'm going to click on my main window with this nice image. It now generated a screenshot from a window. That's why this argument window. And the C stands for copy to clipboard. If you're, for example, in the new Freeform app, and now I use Command V for pasting, it's now pasting this window in. When you work with command line tools, the first thing you type is what app you're using, and afterwards you use arguments. So this is C for copy to clipboard and V for window. So how do I know all these arguments? You can use the man page. So this is another app. And this is another command line tool. Screen capture. Now it gives me all the great stuff. For example, here C forces screen capture to go to the clipboard. And then I used start interaction with window selection mode. Window selection means I can only select a window. This is why when I made a screenshot, I could only either use this window, the terminal, or the background. Just going to create a new window outside. So this was screen capture C. Now, per default, it made a screenshot of my whole screen, which if I go to another app, because I copied this to the clipboard, and I paste this here, this is making the screenshot of my desktop, which is messy, so we're just going to close that again. You can go through all these arguments to decide how you want to create screenshots. Command line tool is also used by the system screenshots, so if you use function command 3, this is taking a screenshot, this is what I just did, or function command 4, this is the one that is just taking a part of the screenshot, or shift command 5, this is opening the default system one, which you don't see because it's on my other screen. So these command line tools are building blocks, so this is just the functionality of these apps, and you can build your GUI, your user interface, your apps on top. You can also use multiple of these command line tools in your application. In order to get an idea of what is possible with these, you can go to ss64.com Mac, where you see the whole list of these command line tools. So you can, for example, convert file types, compress or decompress files, so you're creating zip files. Caffeinate is, for example, if you want to prevent the system from sleep, you can open this and see, oh yeah, you can create an assertion to prevent the display from sleeping. Maybe you have an application that is running, you want to finish this before the Mac goes into sleep, so you can handle this more. There's a lot of developer tools like curl transfer data from or to a server, or something like desk calculator. So maybe you want to know what your disk is doing. You can also manipulate stuff. This one is one of the dangerous ones. This is maybe used for something like clean my Mac X, so renaming files, this kind of things. Or something like open, where you can open other applications, folders or files. This is for some of the applications where they help you automatically to close all your applications and then later open them all again. This would be interesting for this. Then here we have the screen capture one. You can also use something like zips if you want to manipulate images. This is, for example, if you have multiple images and you want to save them in different formats very quickly and also manipulate their file size. Each of these pages has some examples. So here, for example, you can say you want to resize an image to 600 by 300 pixels, the original image, and the name of the output image. The great thing with command line tools is that you can automate processes. Maybe you want to run these commands multiple times to create a whole bunch of different images. This is, for example, create an app icon set automatically without needing to manually resize things. Okay, going now to our tool that we're going to use, which is screen capture. So I'm going to use the C for force screen capture to go to clipboard. When the user presses this button, the image goes to the clipboard, and then in my application, I can use the NSPasteboard to get this image from there. So we don't need to do some fancy handling of data. We easily can get this. And the user also doesn't generate more files on his computer. So great convenience. Then we can use different options. As you saw, when I didn't have an argument, it would just take the full screen or the main screen. We can use the window one that I had, and we can use an area. This is with this S here. This is only allow mouse selection mode. This is when I had to select an area. We could also add a TIFF format. So instead of a PNG, we can get a JPEG back, which is smaller. Okay, you can have a look at whatever you want to have and however you want to customize this. We obviously could also allow the user to customize this to add more of these, just for convenience. One of them is, for example, if you don't want to have the drop shadow, we can use here this O, which is in window capture mode, do not capture the shadow of the window. So you see there's quite a lot of other things. Anyways, we should not linger too much on this, because now we have some work to do with these command line tools. And the main part is now, how do we use command line tools in Xcode in our projects? Now I'm in Xcode and I'm going to create a new macOS app. Interesting on this screen is that you see here an option for command line tools. So you can also create your own command line tools. That is useful, for example, if you have multiple apps that you want to use to share the same functionality, very complex workflow, for example, processing files. You can create your own command line tool and then share this. This can then be used by multiple of your GUI applications. Why would this be beneficial? It's helping you to separate your code base into very separate entities, so there's no confusion, and if something crashes in one of your applications, it doesn't affect the other ones. Xcode is actually also using this technique. For example, there's the XCbuild command line tool, which is used by Xcode when you build your projects. Okay, we create a new macOS app, not a command line tool, and I'm naming this now screenshot app. Then I use interface SwiftUI and storage none. We can discuss this later, what storage option we have available. And then create. Okay, in the content view, we're going to play around with the basics of this, and then I'm going to organize my project to clean this up a little bit. So this is make a screenshot, and here I want to run this command line tool. First, I create a task. This is the process. So this is the shell that helps me to run this command line tools. You can then change the arguments of this task. For example, I need to actually tell it to which command line tool I want to run. This is the launch path, which apparently is going to be deprecated in a future version. I'm just going to check. It's going to deprecate it. It's soft deprecated, so we still can use it for some time. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me which thing to use instead. It's telling me here, deprecated, use executable URL instead. Okay, let's try executable URL. I'm just going to check when this is available. Okay, this is for 10.1.3, so for all the SwiftUI macOS versions. This is URL type, and now I need to know where this is. One thing to note when you're in this terminal, sometimes they tell you where the launch path is. In this case, I'm just going to make it simple and tell you that it is in the users bin sbin, and then the name is screen capture. This is one of these folders that are deeply hidden on your Mac, where they have a lot of these command line tools. Now, the next thing I want to add is the arguments. This, for example, was, do I want to capture only the window? So this is arguments, which is an array of string. So, for example, here I can put in the same thing that I had in my terminal, like C, this is copy to clipboard, and V, this is for the window. So if you, in this case, I need to just append them directly to each other. Now that we basically have everything ready, this is giving all the informations, we can run this. So I can call task.launch, which is also going to be deprecated in the future version of macOS. Use run instead, which is throwing. Okay, let's do a do catch block then. Catch print could not take screen shot, and then I'm just going to print here the error. So this is try task run. Okay, the next thing that I need to do is task.wait until exit. This is blocking the process until the receiver is finished. Okay, now we can run the application to test this. I have now my amazing app with this amazing button, and I can press here take a screenshot. Okay, this didn't work, and I have here an error. So in this case, it's definitely good to use the do catch block. So I have a could not take screenshot because it didn't know this tool. So I had here a spelling error. My usual problems. Okay, now let's make sure this is spelled correctly, and we can try again. Okay, pressing on the take a screenshot, and you see again this camera icon, and that I can select a window. Now, one thing to remember is that I'm using here a very sensitive thing because I could potentially risk the security of my user. So they're asking me no screen recording. Would like to record this computer screen and audio. Do I want to allow this or not? And in this case, because it's my app, I say open system settings to say yes. And then here my app is screenshot app, and I say I enable this, use my password, quit and open. Okay, this doesn't work now because it's running in. Okay, try again. I press here take a screenshot. I take the screenshot, and now you hear the sound. It's now in my clipboard. Testing this in freeforms again. If I'm here and press Command V for pasting this windows in there. So we actually did it properly. I now use the command line tool. And the next thing is I actually want to get the image. So after I did everything here, I want to use the NSPasteboard general. First, I need to check if I can actually read these objects, if they're present. Then here you can define an array. And luckily, NSImage has a constant with image types. So this is the UTI strings declaring what types you have. So this would be including JPEG and PNG. We use here help. We see that this includes public image, public JPEG, public TIFF. So we are checking for any image type. So this is returning a Boolean, and I'm using here a guard statement, else return. Now that I know I have something, I can get the image from the pasteboard. This is NSImage from pasteboard. This is the NSPasteboard .general else return. So this is giving me an optional NSImage guard let image. Okay, now that I have an image, what do we do currently in our app with this? Let's just create a state for testing, a state property here. And state private var image is an NSImage optional, and in the beginning is null. Okay, now that I know I have an image, I can set this to self.image is image. This code block here runs after the do catch block, and I actually don't want to do this. I only want to do this after here I know I'm in the do case, so everything is fine. To make my code already a little bit better, I create a separate function, which is get image from pasteboard. And I'm going to do this whole pasteboard checking in this function, and then when I am here in my do catch block and I know that my task wait until exit and everything was fine, I can call this get image from pasteboard. Now lastly, if this is successful, I have an image and I want to show this image so we see what happened. So now I can say if let image is image, I can show an SwiftUI image with the initializer for NSImage with this image. I'm going to use here resizable and scale to fit. So we should see this image. Maybe we also now remove this placeholder text and run the application. Okay, my window is still there. And now I can say make a screenshot. I am going to use this. So I see my image coming up properly. You can also use any other window. For example, this is the image that I had earlier. So I can again press here, make a screenshot and take this one. And now this one comes up. So you see every time I'm replacing this. Ideally in my app, I want to collect all these images and then show them in a grid. In order to do this, we're going to change here from image to an array of images. But before, I like to create now a separate file for handling this data because my UI is going to be a little bit more complicated by creating a grid. So we are creating a view model just to separate out the command line tool logic. This is screencapture view model. This is a class screencapture view model. And the one property I care about is my images array. So this is an array of NSImage. For this, I'm going to import SwiftUI, which has this NSImage. Okay. Now, depending on what kind of data flow you prefer, you can use the new observation feature or an observable object. I'm going to just use here the observable object. So this will be a add published var. Now I have here the data that I want to collect and I can move my logic. So first this whole taking the screenshot should move in there. So this is func take screenshot. And I need to have here this get images from Pasteboard, which I'm also moving over here. Now that I have here an images array, I'm going to say images.append image. We can now use this view model in content view. So this is a state object var view model, creating here an instance of this view model. Now I don't use the image anymore. And when I use the user presses on this button, I use the view models, get image, take screenshot. This also reminds me of adding a little bit of access control. So this function should not be called from the view. So this is private. You could also create here separate functions to make this a little bit more clean. But I don't want to overcomplicate this before we didn't even have the basic functionality. Okay, now that I changed my data from image to an array of images, I use a for each loop of view models images with image in. This is not identifiable. So let's see if I can use self, which probably doesn't work. Okay, this is working. Let's test this. I take one screenshot and I take another screenshot, and you see they're just lining up. This is good, but I'm not using the screen state very wisely because now I just put them below each other. It might not look so great. So we're going to use a LazyVGrid with grid items using here adaptive of, let's say, 200, maximum 300. And then I use these for each as the content. Additionally, I'm going to use a scroll view around this LazyVGrid. So now if I take a screenshot and another screenshot, they're just adding up. Probably should take a screenshot of something else. And then when I resize this image, you see they flow nicely. This is much more effective than just this stick. Now that we made the screenshots and we collected all of them, the last thing that I want to add to our very basic application is the ability to drag these images into other apps. There's now multiple options to do this. One of them is on drag, where you provide a NS item provider. NS item provider. with object, and here I'm passing my image. Luckily, NSImage works with an item provider, so that we test this again. Okay, I have my app. I take a screenshot of something else, like this window. I collect this. Now let's say I collected all my screenshots and I want to put them in like freeform. I can drag this and then go over here, and you see this plus button that indicates that I can drop something. When I release my mouse, it's dropping in here. Now this has some limitations. For example, if I want to drop this image in Finder, this doesn't work. It's also not going to work when you drop this in Safari, like if you want to drop this in Twitter. And this is because of these image types. Now let's try the newer draggable with payload transferable as the image. Take a screenshot. And again, I can drag this. This is similar. You see it's working pretty fast because I work with the system type image. If you want to make this more versatile, you need to drag around a file URL. This is actually what the system prefers. So we would need to save this image on disk in maybe the temporary folder. And then when I drag something here, I would pass the URL to this file. And then you can also make this more versatile with other things. This is a little bit tricky because sometimes it works with certain things and not others. This also works better on the iPad with drag and drop. So it's, yeah. Drag and drop is one of these things where you have to test quite a lot of things to make it work. Unfortunately, it's not as straightforward, but especially on macOS, people expect drag and drop a lot. Just because it's very intuitive and natural to do drag and drop. The last thing I want to do in this part is add different stylings for taking screenshots. Right now I'm only allowed to take a full window. That might not be applicable for everybody. So I want to add two more types. One is to take the full screen and the other one is for an area. So these are the three options, and I'm using an enum with 3 different cases to declare this in SwiftUI. So this is an enum, screenshot types, and I'm going to use case full, case window, and case area. Now, when the user selects a different case for window and area, I need to adapt the arguments. So these arguments and this enum belong together. So I'm going to add here a computed property, which is per arguments. This is just an array of strings, which is similar. So I use switch self. So in case of full, the one that I already have here is for a full window. So this is this one. The area is C, I still want to copy to clipboard, CS. And for the full one, I'm just using C. Now that I have these screenshot types that I can use in my function, so that here I can say for type screenshot type. And then instead of here hard coding this arguments, I use the type process arguments. Now I can use this when I call this function. So in content view, here take a screenshot, ask me for a parameter. So now I can say I want an area. So in this case, we can add 3 different buttons. So this is in an H stack where I have 3 different versions of area, window, and full. So make a full screenshot, make a window screenshot, and make an area screenshot. I probably should format this a little bit better with a label and icons. And maybe decide where to put these buttons. Okay, now let's test make an area screenshot. So now you see I have this cross and I can take this screenshot. I can take a window screenshot. And I can make a full screenshot of my desktop. I can still drag them back here to other apps. This is the end of this first part of the series, where you learned about command line tools and how to basically use them in your app. You can do much more complicated things where you also read data from these command line tools and automate things, run multiple things. I used in this example the screen capture command line tool, where we can take different screenshots either of windows or full screen, or a different area. We load this in our SwiftUI app, show this in this grid, and then add it, drag and drop to add them to other applications that accepts image types. In the next part of the series, I'm going to talk about how to add a settings view, because I want to add global keyboard shortcuts. In this case, I only can take the screenshot when I here press on these buttons. But maybe this app is closed, I'm somewhere else, and I want to directly take the screenshot. We're going to use a Swift package for this. And I want to add a settings window. So here we're adding a settings where you can change the keyboard shortcuts. So the user can customize what keyboard shortcuts which will trigger these 3 actions. And we're going to change the UI a little bit so that I'm adding a menu bar extra for this, so that here, when I have a screenshot, instead of having this window, I can open this menu bar and then just see this list of these images. Just need to format this so it will come up here and then on top of all the other apps, and then I can drop them in other applications. And then in the following parts, we're going to work actually on the image processing. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to like this video to motivate me to continue with different parts. You can also comment on different features that you want to see and implementations, so I can build this project together with you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of the upcoming parts. Have a nice day. Happy coding.